Hey there, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
I'm Robin Grace, this is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And today we have more topics, as usual. That's the whole deal we do here. We do topics on weird, true crime, paranormal, haunting stuff, cryptids sometimes, legends, things that we find absolutely interesting.
Yeah, we don't start out finding them absolutely interesting. Sometimes we actually don't know what they're about. We just hope that they're going to be absolutely interesting, and they sometimes turn out to be. Most of the time, in fact. I've only had to throw away a couple of scripts in the past. But yeah, it's going to be a good time. So I'm going to be covering the Horton Grand Hotel. Robin, what are you going to be covering this week?
I'm going to be covering the Texas killing fields.
Nice. So we haven't really discussed who's going to go first, so I guess we'll just figure that out. But I will say, in regards to what we did this past week, on Friday, we made our way to San Diego because they had San Diego Comic-Con special edition over the weekend.
Yeah.
And it was really, really fun. It's the first time I've ever attended San Diego Comic-Con. I think it's also the first time you have.
It's my first time as well. My sister usually goes. She's gone for the past, 4 or 5 years. So I was expecting something totally different. But then again, this is post-pandemic first Comic-Con. It's the special edition, right? So it really was just super tiny, nowhere near as crazy as it should be normally.
By super tiny, it was still thousands upon thousands of people.
It's still big, but for a Comic-Con, for San Diego Comic-Con International, it was a very small event, but it was really cool to hang out with our friends over at the JJ Obsession. It's always so much fun hanging out with them.
It was cool to be at a con we didn't have a table at for once, that we all just got to attend together. So it was a really, really fun time. Shout out to the people of San Diego and the folks who ran San Diego Comic-Con. We actually had a blast, so yeah, it was a fun time to be down there. But overall, I think that was basically what our entire past week has been dedicated to, whether or not it was that or leading up to that. That was the big thing that we did. So it was definitely fun, and it definitely inspired my topic as well, and I'll talk a little bit about that.
Cool. Do you want to start since you want to start since the topic kind of goes into your thing, like going San Diego Comic-Con, going into your topic?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. So this week, since it is the final day of November when this releases, I really did want to cover another haunted location before jumping into Disaster December that is coming. And I will say that next week will be our 4-year anniversary episode. So if you would like to send us questions that you were hoping that we would answer, because we're basically going to have kind of an Ask Us Anything format for the 4th year episode.
Yeah, we actually got an email today with a whole bunch of questions for it, so that's kind of cool.
We did. If you have a Discord, we have our own Discord server. The best way to find it is go to scaryish.com, which is our website. Click on the link that just scrolls by at the top, and the ticker that says Join Us on Discord. We have a channel up in our Discord now called the 4th Year Anniversary Questions. A lot of folks jumped on that. So if you want to drop your questions in there, we would be more than happy to hear it. But this is the final day of November, which means that I get to cover another haunted location, which is kind of interesting because our first night after San Diego Comic-Con, we were in the hotel. It was 10:30-ish, somewhere right around there. And we were having this debate. Do we order room service? Do we not get food? Or do we go out and go get food? So we kind of looked up some places to make sure they were still open. And then we decided
really late.
It was late. We decided that we're still going to go out, even though there's a nightlife in San Diego. It's not like there's not. We wanted to go out and try and find some food.
But it is definitely not as accessible as other places.
In particular, Las Vegas, where everything's open, which me and Robin are just really used to. But we were right by the gas lamp district. So we decided to hoof it. We walked down there. And we were walking around looking for a specific restaurant. It took a while. Then by the time we found it, we decided this probably isn't the restaurant for us because I'm pretty sure their kitchen was completely closed at that point. And so we were kind of bouncing around from place to place to place to see if it's where we wanted to eat. And at one point we walked past the Horton Grand Hotel.
We literally walked past this building and all were just thinking, it looks haunted.
Yeah.
It straight up looks haunted.
And Jess, she reached over to me and she tapped me and she pointed at it. And I looked up because I was in a fucking hard target hunt for food. So I was not paying attention to architecture of the city. But she pointed at the building and she said, it looks haunted. And I looked at it, I was like, it's nice though. But yeah, it absolutely looks haunted. And so on the side of the building was Horton Grand Hotel. And she said, let me look it up. Maybe it actually is haunted. She Googled it, and there was just
the first thing on the top was haunted
Yeah.
tales of the hotel. And
Sometimes when you research a hotel or a building or a place, it doesn't immediately come up with haunted. It comes up with like historical facts and other stuff like that. And then eventually you get stuff that says it's haunted. But in particular for Horton Grand Hotel, there were definitely haunting stories that were like front and center before you even saw what the rates were to rent it out. So I was like, maybe that'll wind up being my topic. Like, let me check that out.
were the pictures nice inside?
Yeah, it is.
Or is it like
still,
Airbnb or like...
It's a hotel, but it's still meant to have like that character of being a hotel that's older. So like the bathrooms have been renovated. They look new, but the tanks for the toilets are still like on the wall where you have to like pull the thing.
Okay.
But they've updated it to make sure everything's like up to code. It looks like older, but it also looks fairly nice. So after thinking about it, putting it on the topic list, looking into it, sure enough, I decided this is going to be my topic because it certainly seems haunted. So without further ado, I present the Horton Grand Hotel. So what's interesting about the Horton Grand Hotel, like we mentioned, is the combination of looking nice on the outside and also looking like it's haunted.
We literally looked at it. It was just like, it's haunted. But it might have been because we did walk around at night. So we saw it at night. You know, maybe that's why we felt like it looked haunted. But maybe buildings just give off that vibe.
We went back during the day and I was able to get a picture of it too, because it was like, it's very pretty. And I want to make sure that it was represented in the daytime. It has that older architecture to it that makes you just say like, wow, like that's impressive. I bet people have been murdered there. Which is a specific look that I think places kind of went for a while. But before we dive into the ghostly details, let me tell you a bit about the history of the Horton Grand Hotel. So it was originally named the Grand Horton Hotel instead of the Horton Grand Hotel. Mm-hmm. So like huge difference back in the day. And it was built in 1887. It was actually part of this big boom of construction that occurred around that time when the Transcontinental Railroad finally connected to San Diego in 1885. It was this big milestone for the city. It was on the map, essentially, so they started building a bunch of different things there. But that's not all. It just wasn't the Grand Horton Hotel. The Grand Horton was only part of the current Horton Grand Hotel. Another hotel was actually built directly next to it, known as the Brooklyn Kale Saddlery Hotel. Why two hotels, you might be thinking? Well, the Grand Horton was fancy. The Brooklyn was more casual, for the common folk, really. It was built in that Western/Victorian style also. I pictured the Grand Horton as a fancy hotel. And the Brooklyn is something out of like A Million Ways to Die in the West, or Tombstone, or The Quick and the Dead. Obviously, like Western setting stuff, because it was the 1880s when it opened up at the same time as the Grand Horton Hotel. So it's kind of funny. I actually wrote that down in my script, and like 2 minutes later, I heard the theme song to A Million Ways to Die in the West playing from behind me because Robin watched it while she was doing her script. Anyways, the hotels both became run down kind of over time, and after like around 90 years, they were in really bad shape. So by 1970, 90 years later, they were scheduled for demolition, and the city of San Diego wound up buying them both so the city could build the shopping center that currently resides there at the site, with the intention of reusing the same materials these two hotels were built with to keep it as authentic as possible.
All right.
They actually dismantled both hotels brick by brick, numbering the bricks along the way and storing them so that when they came back to complete this project, they were able to use those same materials. I think the dismantling started in 1980. In 1986, so a year after I was born, they quote-unquote rebuilt the hotels into a new iteration where it's two hotels combined into one. So it's essentially a single hotel now versus how it used to be like split down the middle.
Okay. I just imagine they built everything with new materials inside and just put the old stuff on the outside, right?
Nope, everything is the exact same. No, they just used it in like the design of the building. But it's still very functional. I mean, they're older bricks, but still it's, bricks that they're being reused. So it was pretty cool. They used all those same materials combined with newer materials to keep it as authentic as possible. Which I find very, very interesting. They decided to name it the Horton Grand Hotel now. And there's actually a Grand Oak staircase inside from the original Grand Horton Hotel that was also dismantled piece by piece. And they actually had to ship it to Austria where it could be repaired and then sent back to America and San Diego to be reassembled in the new iteration of the hotel. And it's in there right now. It is pretty effing cool. So
Really?
if you were to take a tour or something like that, I'm sure they would point to the grand staircase and be like, guess what we did with that? Or guess how old that is? Because it's pretty awesome. It was there at the inception of the Grand Horton Hotel. So it's something to keep in mind depending on what rules you think ghosts might go by when it comes to haunting, because the original building is no longer there. You know, so if you think that a ghost haunts a location based off of what it looked like when it was alive, when it was a human being still, the walls are in different places now. So if you see something like walk through a wall or walk through a door, it might be because that door wall wasn't there before in the original iteration of the two hotels.
Right.
Also, some folks think that a ghost is going to haunt a specific location. Well, would tearing it down and rearranging the bricks dismiss the ghosts, because it's basically a new structure at this point. After all, it's basically just a brand new building that they may not be connected to anymore because things have changed, obviously.
If Poltergeist has taught me anything, it doesn't matter if it's a new building.
Well, that house had many hots, so it's hard to tell. But that said, let's talk about some ghosts. So it's not shocking to hear that some of the more notorious haunting tales at the Horton Grand Hotel come from the older iteration of the hotel that existed. The first one I'll tell you about is a man named Roger Whittaker. Roger was a drinker and a drug user and a gambler and a cheat. He would take other folks' hard-earned money with his tomfoolery and his shenanigans. You know, a real piece of shit. Roger found himself staying at the Grand Horton Hotel, in particular, room 309.
Okay.
Probably want to remember that room if you would like to attend someplace that is haunted. If you know anything about gambling, you know it can attract some dangerous people from time to time, especially when it's done outside of, you know, like the places where it's supposed to be done, or it's regulated, specifically like Las Vegas. If you were to just like land in a city that's not known for gambling, and you're like, where can I find an illegal poker game or something like that?
Okay.
It's going to be a bit shady. And that's how things were back in the day for Roger. While Roger thought he himself was dangerous, there were definitely some dangerous people out there looking for a card game. And they were far more dangerous than Roger. People that had like the smarts to notice when they're being cheated. People who also were willing to take swift action out of vengeance.
Okay.
Roger was out gambling one night in the Stingery district, which is just a few blocks away from the Gaslamp district and the Horton Hotel in general. While gambling, Roger decided to try some of his tricks at a game of cards with some nefarious characters. Things seemed to be going okay for old Raj right up until he got caught and called out for cheating. Things then went from bad to worse. These were not just card players, they were killers. And Roger bolted from the establishment he was in and hightailed it back to the Horton with these other folks pursuing him the entire way. He ran inside and bolted up the stairs to his room, 309. He ran inside, diving into the armoire and remaining perfectly still. You know that moment when you're trying to be silent and you realize just how loud your breathing is because you don't hear anything else in the room?
Yeah.
You better believe Roger knew that moment. And while he waited, he heard the sounds of footsteps approaching in the hallway. And I would say remember the sound of footsteps in the hallway as well. I imagine Roger was in that armoire hoping, please go to another room, please be a different guest. Just sort of trying to will into existence who that person was or persons were that were coming down the hallway. But then the sound of his door opening shattered that illusion for him.
That's so sad.
Whether you want it to be a slow creak of hinges of someone who had just picked a lock slowly opening the door, or the sound of the door jamb splintering from being kicked in, I'll leave it up to your headcanon and how you want this to play out. But either way, his pursuers entered the room, they searched, and were unable to find Roger. And right when they were about to leave, and he was going to breathe a sigh of relief, one of them said on their way out, quote, "I found you on Spotify." And Roger softly began to weep, knowing he couldn't hold back what was to come next. It was required by the law of nature, and he said simply, "Shout out to Spotify." When he said that, the gamblers knew exactly where he was. Moments later, the gamblers were actually seen departing the hotel in a haste, and an employee rushed into room 309 to find gunshot holes in the armoire and Roger inside.
Wow. So they didn't even check it. They were just like, no, we'll just
They
shoot
shot
from
through the
outside.
doors of the armoire, is the legend. This is a good moment to put in the disclaimer that this story and all the stories that are to come are 100% true and accurate, and anyone who says otherwise is a fucking liar. Don't believe them. Just kidding. This could all be bullshit, obviously. Some folks actually state that Roger Whittaker did exist, but they're not sure where this particular legend came from because he supposedly was around significantly further back in the timeline than the Horton Grand Hotel, which is interesting because that version of the story states that Roger was born in the 1820s. So 60 years before the hotel would be in operation, he wound up falling in love with a lady whose family didn't care for him. And then he and his lady believed that the only thing that mattered was the power of love. He proposed to her saying, "Yo, dog, to hell with your family, let's run off and get hitched." To which she replied, "Okay." And they were engaged.
Like,
I thought she sounded lovely. So lovely, in fact, that her father thought that Roger Whittaker isn't taking my lovely daughter away from me. And out came the soon-to-be father-in-law to find Roger. And find him he did. Roger saw him coming and said, "Can I have your daughter for the rest of my life?" And before he got to that one part was like, say yes, because I need to know. Mm-hmm. The father-in-law shot Roger and killed him on the spot. So
just all your lyrics and your made-up stories and your...
Whoa. Made up? Excuse me? Actually, I thought it was really funny because if the song was, "Can I have your daughter for the rest of my life?" and then gunshots and then silence for like 2.5 minutes.
Would not be as romantic.
Wouldn't be as romantic, but it'd be shorter. Anyways, Roger's fiancée was distraught after witnessing her fiancé be murdered by her father. There was nothing she could do about it, however. Her father dragged Roger's body away, and deciding to avoid questions, he dumped him into a swamp nearby and let the wildlife clean up his mess. According to this legend, the swamp was directly next to where the Horton Grand Hotel would be built some 50 years after this incident occurred.
All right.
Regardless of how Roger died, he is said to haunt room 309 to this day and the surrounding area within the hotel. Guests on the 3rd floor have reported seeing a man in clothes that seem oddly out of place standing outside of or near room 309. When they see this man, if they were to glance away and look back or like just sort of blink, the man disappears. So it could be Roger, or it could be some cosplayer who's attending Comic-Con who's just dressed up like a guy who's in the 19th century, who's also super fast.
All right.
And when you blink, he disappears. Guests who stay in room 309 report that some electronic devices randomly turn themselves on or off. Objects are said to go missing, only to be found moved, despite no one having moved them and no hotel staff having entered the room that could have moved them. Others state that they are awoken in the middle of the night by their bed shaking with no apparent cause. That's supposed to be one of the more terrifying things that happens. Some state that they awake to the sound of the doors of the armoire that's in the room creaking open in the middle of the night. I saw one review that said it happened at 3:09 a.m. And I was just like, that's kind of lame. And this last piece of information is the one that would bother me the most. Multiple folks report that the room heats up in the middle of the night.
No
and
thanks.
No amount of air conditioning or breeze from the window can cool it down. It's said to get upwards of 95 degrees in the room, to which I say, fuck that.
Maybe it's because Roger is burning in hell.
That could be, but if he's haunting it, then I guess he's not really burning in hell. I read a bunch of reviews on like travel blogs of people who have stayed in room 309, and most of them are like, I didn't really notice anything, or it definitely feels really odd. Several of them did note they woke up in the middle of the night and the room was incredibly fucking hot and they couldn't figure out why or cool it off. And it's like, it just sounds like it's an old hotel. There's something wrong with that room. But everyone's like, oh my God, it's just this creepy ambiance. And I just feel like it's an excuse for the hotel to not fix the fucking room. When the room itself is unoccupied, hotel workers claim to sense the presence of Roger or sometimes even see him out of the corner of their eyes. But they all state that they never feel threatened by him or his presence. Some even say that as they pass the room when it's empty, they can hear the sound of shuffling cards. A few maids have actually stepped inside to check and see where the sound is coming from, and they observed an indentation on the mattress as if someone had been lying down on the bed. So there was something about that obviously creeped them out because the room is supposed to be empty. Another ghost said to be seen in the hotel is that of a woman named Ida Bailey. So Ida actually owned the property at one point. Kind of. Prior to it being developed into a hotel, a structure stood in this place, and supposedly it was a brothel. Ida's brothel. While Ida's business unfortunately didn't fare well enough to stay there, it said she's attached to the location in particular. So staff and guests alike claim that they see a woman around the hotel that is surrounded by a glowing white mist. She's often sighted near areas that seem to be unnaturally cold. There's supposed to be multiple cold spots throughout the hotel that are a hotbed of paranormal activity.
Sounds like Ida and Roger got to get together.
Yeah, because it'll probably just balance out to like a clean, crisp 72 degrees. It's stated that several guests have observed Ida, and instead of doing that thing where you look away or you blink and the ghost vanishes, she actually moves towards them. Not angrily, not like the librarian at the beginning of Ghostbusters 1. She floats towards folks and then floats through them, like Slimer in Ghostbusters 1. Just slower and less yelling. No word on the amount of ectoplasm present after she floats through people. I don't think there's any.
I also recommend everybody go watch the new Ghostbusters. It is so good.
Robin really, really liked Ghostbusters Afterlife. I also liked it. We were pleasantly surprised. It's said that Ida will sometimes enter rooms and turn lights on or off, seemingly having a conversation with someone who isn't there, or maybe she's having a conversation with herself. That also unnerves guests to see, one, a ghost, and two, a ghost that is talking to itself and turning on and off lights, almost like she's, maintaining the rooms and making sure she's saving electricity or something like that.
Okay.
Or she knows there's a guest present, so she wants to make sure the light is on for them. She's also said to be...
Tom Bodette?
Yeah, he'll leave the light on for you, and she'll turn it off. All right. She's also said to have been seen on the grand staircase that I mentioned earlier that was taken apart piece by piece, but reconstructed and brought back. Did you think I'd mention it just because it was cool?
Yes.
No.
Oh.
No, silly. It's relevant, and I was going to bring it back up. Madam Ida Bailey is actually one of the first ghosts ever witnessed on this property. It is said that she was seen only a couple of years after the hotel opened, dating back to the 1880s. So patrons from the 1880s in particular claim to have seen a glowing woman that matched Ida's description floating down the staircase, accompanied by several other spectral humanoid forms. Like
it was her entourage.
She was having a little ghost party, almost as if they were all having a ghastly ball that they were eager to attend. The thing that's interesting about...
If she ran a brothel, it's obviously...
An
brothel.
orgy.
Yes.
So ghost orgy. That also makes sense. I also think it's interesting that the Grand Horton Hotel at the time and the Horton Grand Hotel as it exists now, all these things that are witnessed are typically seen of ghosts or these entities, and the reports are always like they don't feel threatened by them, and they're nice, There's not something scary or bad happening, so I think it has a different vibe to it than most of the haunted locations we talk about. It should be noted that while Roger and Ida are the two most famous ghosts that are associated with the Horton Grand Hotel, they are not the only spooks or specters that have been seen on site. Several other ghosts that go unnamed have supposedly been seen in the hotel, all wearing what is thought to be 19th century clothing as well. Because there are more than just two ghosts, there are quite a few unexplained cold spots throughout the hotel. Flickering lights are also seen in a lot of different places, not just room 309, not just on the third floor, and spots that just generally make people quote-unquote uneasy. Sure, this can be explained by the fact that it's a hotel that was rebuilt almost 40 years ago, and maybe it's drafty, and that's why there's cold spots, or that the electrical may not just be up to code and needs to be repaired, and that's why lights flicker, or that the reputation of a hotel being quote-unquote haunted would be more than enough to make anyone feel uneasy. But they really kind of lean into the reputation there. Folks have consistently stated that seeing apparitions floating around and manipulating objects and electronics since its inception and eventual recreation is commonplace, and it doesn't really seem to freak the staff out very much. It's kind of like, same shit, different day. It's said that while they tend to scare quite a few patrons upon being seen or playing around with stuff, they all range in behavior from benevolent to passive. Either they seem to be doing something because they're happy and doing it out of joy, or they just don't realize anyone's there watching them and they don't seem angry. So overall, it's a kind of a different vibe than the nefarious style hauntings and topics we typically cover here. That said, of the things that are paranormal within the hotel, folks all over the hotel claim to hear the sound of footsteps randomly in places where there is no one to be attached to them.
I mean, footsteps echo in the hallways of a hotel.
They really do, especially when they're echoing through time from a murder that may or may not have happened, when a man was hiding in an armoire hoping the people would just go away.
Why don't they hear gunshots? That would be scarier.
You figure they would, right? One of the more common paranormal activities from patrons complaining is that of laughter coming from other rooms or hallways or parts of the hotel that are unoccupied, only to have these places investigated by hotel staff and to be found completely empty. It's not like someone snuck into a room or is squatting in a place of the hotel. It's just empty, and people can still hear laughter coming from these empty spots. Right. So it would be creepy regardless of whether or not it seemed benevolent. Like a child's disembodied laughter could seem nice to a ghost, but to a human being that's still alive, it would be probably one of the most scary things that they could ever hear.
Yep.
So that said, it certainly seems like whatever ghosts haunt the Horton Grand Hotel, they seem to be enjoying themselves, as do paranormal enthusiasts. The hotel being very aware of its reputation and not shying away from it helps. It's included in several San Diego ghost tours, and the staff is more than willing to discuss the reputation for folks who are patrons. If you are traveling to San Diego and you decide you want to stay there, the rooms are reasonably priced. Just looking at it for tonight, the rooms were between $120 and $150 a night, which is, doable, with the normal rate hike due to holidays and weekends and the like when you try and look around.
Season, so.
Yeah, when you look at stuff like that, it's obviously going to be more expensive if you're looking at like Christmas, but overall, $120 to $150 a night is definitely not bad. I will say it's a great location as far as where it lies in San Diego. It's next to a bunch of food that we walked past and well within walking distance of the San Diego Convention Center. So if you're in the area, check it out or stay there and tell us how it went. Maybe the next time we go back to San Diego, we will book one night in room 309 and see how that goes.
Nope. Mm-mm.
I would like to do that, but if it gets up to 95 degrees, I'm not going to freak out of paranoia. I was going to be like, can I get a different room? Like one with functioning air conditioning? Because that would definitely drive me crazy. But that, my spooky friends, is the Horton Grand Hotel of San Diego.
The whole entire time is really, really hard for me to try to find a joke where I could fit in Horton Hears a Who somewhere in there.
It didn't make an appearance in my script either because it was just shoehorned in way too hard.
Yeah.
So I was just like, nah, I guess I'm just not going to try and do it. But sometimes you got to let the best ones go. They'll make their way back later.
Okay.
So I really enjoyed doing this topic because we just walked past a building, pointed at it, and said, that looks haunted. Turns out it totally fucking was. And it really did have some good stories associated with it as well. So shout out to the Horton Grand Hotel. Shout out to JG Obsession. For pointing out this building while we were walking and then saying like, that could be your next topic. And sure enough, it was.
Sure enough.
So right on. Before we move into Robin's topic, we are going to take a quick commercial break.
All right. Welcome to the much more depressing and brutal half of the episode. Yours is very, just straightforward, right? Cute.
Wholesome dead people.
Yeah, wholesome haunted hotel. This week I'm going to be going the true crime route. One of my favorite things is true crime, learning about it, not the actual act of true crime, as I'm sure many of you are aware of by now. This episode, I'm going to be talking about the Texas killing fields. And I don't know if a lot of people have heard of them or know the story behind them or this area. I am one of those people that know the name, but nothing about the story behind it.
That's how I am too. Like I've heard these three words used together. I have no idea what they're referencing.
So the Texas killing fields are a 25-acre stretch of land that is located a mile off of Interstate 45. And it's a highway that only runs within the state of Texas. So it connects the cities of Dallas and Houston.
So it's not an interstate.
Yeah.
It's just in Texas.
But Texas is huge.
Well, yeah, but isn't it called Interstate 45?
I think it's called an interstate. It's like I read something online where it's like things that end in 5 are supposed to be interstates and go between states, like the 15, 215, stuff like that.
Doesn't Hawaii have interstates as well?
I don't know. The island I lived on had one road from one end to the other.
Okay, so not in that case, but yeah, I just think it's interesting. Okay.
Actually, I think it's a loop. You can go around the whole island on one road. Okay. It's like, I don't know. We didn't have fucking freeways. So it's a highway that only runs within the state. It connects Dallas to Houston, and then it goes southeast to Galveston, and then into the Gulf of Mexico. So this area has been described as the perfect place for killing someone and getting away with it.
It's fucked up.
So it's something that really should not be advertised. People shouldn't be telling people, like, drop bodies here. No one ever figures it out. The director of the film, Texas Killing Fields, commented that on the site, you could see the I-45. So you could see this interstate from the area. But if you screamed, no one could really hear you at all. So if you got murdered out there, no one would hear it. If you were somewhere near the middle of it, if you ran, there really would not be anywhere for you to run to, because it's 25 acres. Where are you going to be running to, right? All of these statements are incredibly worrisome, but at the same time, I think you could say that for a large part of like all the deserts that surround where we live, who knows how many bodies could be hiding out there. There's a place just outside of town where people go to, shoot guns all the time, blow stuff up.
Because it's empty and the backdrop is a mountain. So like your bullets aren't going to go anywhere. But yeah, I think about that sometimes when we're leaving town it's just empty desert.
Right. And
after
because,
you get out of Vegas.
But because people are shooting stuff out there all the time, imagine there's someone out there who just shoots someone and they're like, it's just another person firing their guns out there.
Plus, that's just one area that we know of, and there's so much desert.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the movie Casino, where they go to meet outside of town, and they talk about how many holes there are in the desert with, like, the city's buried problems. That's terrifying to think about.
I can't imagine how many bodies there are hidden out there. It's just terrifying. And the fact that just this area of Texas has this highway that's known for dead bodies, it's just insane. So since the 1970s, the bodies of 30 murder victims have been found within the area of the killing fields. And I'm sure there's way more than that. I'm sure there's way more than just 30. These bodies have been predominantly young girls and women. That's
disgusting.
Even more is that there have been women and girls disappearing around the area, many of which are still missing to this day. So Wikipedia just has like a list of a bunch of women that have been murdered or gone missing. But I'm sure there's got to be way more in that area that have been murdered or gone missing or whatnot. And it's just not attributed to the killing fields because maybe it's a little further off or something like that. You know what I mean? But because of the sheer amount of bodies and possible other victims, it is thought to be the work of not one, but multiple serial killers, which makes sense. Due to the fact that a majority of the victims fell within the age range of 12 and 25, with many sharing similar physical features, even hairstyles, it wouldn't be beyond the possibility that a single person was doing the killings, but realistically, the span of time and amount of bodies would point to a multitude of culprits, and they're all killed in different ways. So it's probably a bunch of people that decide we're just going to dump bodies there because it seems to work out, right? Despite the efforts of police and FBI, there aren't many of these murders that have been solved. Those that have been solved were possible due to prisoner confessions or even confessions procured under the duress from police. So police force them into confessing.
Right. Man, this number of 30 is really getting me. I'm sitting here doing the math in my head. It's like since 1970, 30 of them are the ones that have been found, which it's like 51 years, right? In 51 years, it's averaging like every year and a half, essentially, a new victim shows up in this
that's
location.
Why I'm thinking there's got to be more people that have been murdered or have gone missing in that area.
Every 18 months, you can expect a new body to pop up. We've lived where we live currently at 5 years, going on 6 years.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if at this point we've had 3 bodies discovered across the street from us or in our area. Like, that would be so unsettling.
But people get murdered out here all the time.
I mean, we can go into murder rates and stuff like that as well. I follow those pretty closely. So it's still something that for a small stretch of land where there's not supposed to be anything, it seems to be...
there's stuff there. It's not barren. There's neighborhoods and things and stuff.
That's even worse. Like, what the fuck is happening in this place?
Things exist there. It's not barren land. It's just a stretch of land that people just dump bodies at. So when scrolling through the list of victims found within the killing fields, it's really sad to see how many of these victims are under the age of 20. A lot of them are under the age of 20. The first of the bodies discovered on this list that I found on the internet, right, is that of a Brenda Jones from Galveston, Texas. And you'll notice a lot of people are from Galveston in this. She'd been on her way to visit her aunt when she went missing on July 1st, 1971. She was found the next day. She was only 14 when she was killed. A total of 10 bodies were discovered between 1971 and 1979. 9 years, right? Total of 10 bodies, so that's more than a body a year.
Right.
In the 1980s, about 3 women disappeared in the area and were never found, while another 4 were fortunate enough to be found.
Still not very fortunate, but...
Right. The 90s saw a further 5 discoveries. A woman named Jessica Kane disappeared August 17th, 1997. And she was reported missing after her father found her truck abandoned along the I-45. And she was 17 at the time. Her body wasn't found until 19 years later.
Wow.
On March 18th, 2016. She was found in a field next to Hobby Airport in Houston, about 7 miles from downtown Houston. And it's really not that far from Galveston. But it's just crazy that she was just lying in a field near the airport. You know, how many people walk past the airport for years? No one knew she was in this field right there. So for Jessica, there was a suspected serial killer. So a man named William Lewis Reese. In May of 1997, 2 months after Kane went missing, he was arrested for the attempted kidnapping and murder of a 19-year-old girl named Sandra Seppo from Webster, Texas. And he was found guilty for her murder the year after and was sentenced to 60 years in prison. In 2015, his DNA matched some DNA that was found at a murder of a 19-year-old girl named Tiffany Johnson, who was found murdered in Oklahoma in 1997. So this guy is just murdering left and right? Following this discovery, he confessed to the killing of Jessica Kane and Kelly Cox. So he was like, well, I'm getting caught for all of these. I might as well tell you.
Credit for the other ones.
So his confession led investigators to the burial sites of these victims. So if he hadn't said anything, she would probably still be out there, which is absolutely depressing. In 2021, so this year, he was convicted of the murder of Tiffany Johnston, and was sentenced to death. He is still to be put on trial for the other Texas murders, with prosecutors confirming that they will be seeking the death penalty for those as well.
Interesting.
So that the fact that that's 2021, that's still going on, that's crazy. In 2001, Tot Harriman was 57, went missing July 12th. She had been searching for a home somewhere along the route between League City and Corpus Christi, also in Texas, obviously. She was last seen driving her 1995 Lincoln Continental along the 35 highway, but neither her or her car had been found, and because of the age gap between her and the other victims, I don't know if it could be said that she was part of the killing fields type thing. But if she were somehow found, that would be better than having been gone forever and never being found. She was 57, which is,
she doesn't fit the pattern, but usually serial killers do have outliers that sort of like stray away from like what they typically do.
Yeah. So you never know, but nothing like her car, nothing was ever found. So you never know. Maybe she drove somewhere completely different, ditched the car somewhere or went to Mexico. Who knows? In the early 2000s, another 2 bodies were found. So the latest on that list was a Teresa Benegas, and she disappeared on Halloween night in 2006 and was found a few days later. She had been murdered in a field across from Dickinson High School in Dickinson, Texas, which is so sad. A really sad thing to note, on top of all the disappearances and all the murder, is that a number of them happened in pairs, which I find to be so confusing, because you are always taught in school, take a buddy.
Right. If you're going to go somewhere, don't go alone. Take one person with you.
So on August 4th, 1971, both Rhonda Johnson and Sharon Shaw were seen walking along the Seawall Boulevard in Galveston, Texas. They were both really young, 14 and 13 respectively. They were both seen leaving the beach but never returned home. On January 3rd, 1972, so August, September, October, November, December, like 5 months later, 2 boys fishing near Clear Lake discovered a human skull floating in the water that they thought was a ball at first. The rest of...
Talk about the destruction of innocence in one sentence. Kids fishing in this lake thinking something is a ball, they pull it up and it's a human skull.
Yep. So the rest of Johnson and Shaw's bodies were discovered 6 weeks later in a marsh near the lake. In May of 1972, a tip was received that told investigators to look into a Michael Lloyd Self. He was a local gas station attendant, and he actually voluntarily went to the station the day after, police visited him. They're like, hey, we're going to need you down at the station the next day. He's like, all right, I'll see you there. He goes down. According to Self, he was held in confinement for hours and wasn't allowed to leave unless he made a confession.
Wow.
That's where the confession under duress comes into play. So he stated that he was hit and assaulted and taunted by the police chief, Michael Morris, who threatened to kill Self if he didn't confess. He did eventually sign a confession that contained a number of discrepancies. So, it didn't really look like he was the one that did it because it didn't make any sense. In the confession that he wrote, it stated that he strangled the girls, but the medical examiner found no evidence of strangulation on the bodies. There were other instances where they tried to get, quote unquote, further details, right? Where they tried to get him to say other things to kind of make it fit better. But everything that they tried to get him to say kind of just conflicted each other, so it didn't make any sense. Despite all of this, his trial began May 15th, 1973, and lasted 5 months. He was convicted of first-degree murder of Sharon Shaw, but not that of Rhonda Johnson, which is sad because Rhonda's never going to get justice, or maybe both of them aren't going to get justice.
Yeah, I was going to say, if he wasn't the one that did it, then this is like a miscarriage of justice at this point because you blamed the wrong person in order to take away whatever political pressures you might have of, we need to find the killer, which we've seen happen in a lot of true crime cases, especially the ones from older time periods where this just sort of was kind of a staple of how things were handled after a certain point.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we need to find a killer, so let's just make sure we find someone that we can say is the killer. Any
appeals that they wrote in to try and get him out of jail were denied. It was 3 years later when the chief of police, Michael Morris, you remember him? He's the one that kind of tortured him into confessing. And the deputy, Tommy Deal, both were on his case, were arrested for multiple bank robberies that dated back to 1972.
So corrupt cops.
Yep. So Morris was sentenced to 55 years in prison. Deal was given 30. So corruption was definitely something that played into Self being convicted at the time. So it isn't beyond the realm of possibility that they totally just forced him into a confession.
Yeah. Every single thing that they touched should have been reviewed after they were convicted of a crime.
He should have been let out.
I mean, I don't know how the appeals process goes when it comes to the person who...
We're not lawyers.
Got your confession suddenly turns into a criminal themselves or is revealed to have been a criminal that whole time. Especially when during the trial, the person states, I didn't do this, but I was threatened. I was told I'd be murdered if I didn't confess to it. And then later on it comes out like, yeah, this person is absolutely capable of doing something like that based off the fact that they also committed some sort of, heinous crime.
Yeah.
I don't know, like the process you go by.
I have no idea.
Like evaluating everything they touched while they were a law enforcement officer, but it all literally needs to be reviewed.
So despite having applied for appeal after appeal, he was never granted a new trial, and he ended up dying in prison from cancer in 2000. An article published in 2011 in the Houston Chronicle included statements from Self's attorneys, and they believed that he was wrongfully accused and forced into making a false confession. Even a couple of the investigators on the case believed that he was wrongly convicted, which is saying something. If the investigators are like, dude, I don't even know what to tell you, that there's no way, right? All right, so in August of 2015, there was a man named Edward Harold Bell, and while he was in jail for the murder of a 26-year-old that had tried to stop him from publicly masturbating in front of a group of teenage girls in 1978, he admitted to murdering a total of 11 girls.
Oh my God.
Who he referred to as the quote, unquote, 11 that went to heaven. And he also spouted other things about being brainwashed and forced into killing by secret organizations. So I don't really know how much of his statements can be believed as, fact. But he named Shaw and Johnson among those that he murdered, but he was never charged for their murders. He died in prison on April 20th, 2019 at the age of 82. So a lot of these people lived till fairly recently. Other pairs that disappeared together include Debbie Ackerman and Maria Johnson, both from Galveston, Texas. They disappeared November 15th, 1971 after accepting a ride from someone. They were both 15. They were found 2 days later, both found in Turner's Bayou. There's also a Brooks Bracewell and Georgia Gear, 12 and 14, respectively. These people are all just so young.
I can't believe how young almost all of these people are. They're kids.
Yep.
They're absolutely 100% kids when they're taken or killed.
They were both from Dickinson, Texas, and disappeared September 6, 1974. They were last seen at a convenience store off of the I-45, and their bodies weren't found until April 3rd, 1981.
Wow.
In Alvin, Texas. They were left in a ditch there. Then finally, there's Lynette Bibbs and Tamara Fisher, who were 14 and 15. They were from Houston, Texas, and disappeared February 1st, 1996. They were last seen together at a teen club with a 22-year-old male friend. I don't know why at 14 and 15 you have a 22-year-old male friend. Or, a acquaintance of any type. Maybe
he was supposed to be their chaperone. Like maybe he knew their families.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know. Like a babysitter? Wildly. I don't know. But he claims to have dropped them off at a motel on Old Spanish Trail in Houston. One, if you are their chaperone, why the hell are you dropping them off at a fucking motel? That's not right.
Not just taking them back to their houses.
They were found on the side of a dirt road near Cleveland, Texas, 2 days later. Both had been shot to death. Some think that there were two different shooters. I was mind blown, and I'm still mind blown, by how many girls, young girls, were murdered in pairs.
That's probably the most disturbing thing of all this, is that they always tell kids, like, growing up, like, take a friend, have a buddy, stay safe.
Right.
And people are in pairs in this case.
It kind of just reminded me of all the stuff that I did when I was a kid with my friends when I was younger. And it kind of freaked me out thinking that maybe one of those days I could have been the unlucky one, maybe I could have been kidnapped and murdered or something like that. And it really makes me hope that parents out there are holding on to their kids and hugging their kids because, like, you never know. These kids are so young, and it's not like, I'm sure these parents were like, oh yeah, go make sure you're always with your friend. And they're in pairs and this still happens to them and it freaks me out. And I mean, sometimes there's nothing you can do to control it, right? But at least be more careful when you're around the area of the Texas killing fields and what has been nicknamed the Highway of Death. I'm sure there are a lot of highways out there that have been witness to lots of body drops and lots of murders too. And this is just one of those highways. And now you folks know that this one exists too. I just really hope that, kids have to stay safe, right? Especially in this day and age when social media, you don't know who you're talking to on the other end.
You don't know who's able to see the things. You can try and set your account to be private, but if you accept a friend request,
it's a whole nother problem, right?
If you accept a friend request from someone that you're not quite sure if you know or not, which I think a lot of folks do, especially when you're younger, because you're trying to build up your list of friends, because it is supposed to be valuable or make you think that you have a bigger connection if you have a higher number of friends on your friends list. You're putting out all this information, and it's just kind of creepy to think about. This happened in the 70s. Sure, that there's been like massive advances when it comes to police work and how like detectives find things. And it's just still crazy to think the amount of access that we give to, strangers in our day-to-day lives just through social media and things like that. And, this one in particular though is like chilling because of the fact that girls were taken in pairs. It's not just that they found someone who had been separated from the pack and was on their own. They took two people at once.
Yes.
So it's,
and I think that, but maybe that plays into it too, where it's like, you're with your friend. Nothing can happen to you, right? You're with your friend. What's the worst that could happen? You guys are together. If anything, you guys can get each other out. But that's not the case, You just can't let yourself be lulled into this false sense of security. It's just, oh my gosh, I really hope kids out there, you guys are smart and don't like the women at My Favorite Murder always say, like, fuck politeness. Don't just be nice to someone. If someone's like driving down the street and say, hey, you want to ride? You don't fucking know this person, even if you do know this person, like this 22-year-old quote unquote acquaintance, like you can't trust these people. I don't know. Be smart out there. It's really triggering for me, man.
Yeah, it's really hard to give advice that you think is going to keep someone safe. But, like you said, the ladies at MFM really have taken it very seriously to tell people fuck politeness. And I think it's brilliant because I think that there is this mindset that people are raised with, that kids are raised with, and especially girls are raised with, where it's like you have to be sugar and spice and everything nice. And, you're told like respect your elders and all this other stuff about how you're supposed to behave and talk politely. And you're also told like, oh, but don't talk to strangers, and that's like the only rule of thumb you get when you're a kid of, protect yourself. And then the older you get, you still have those like rules ingrained in you until something traumatic happens where you wish you would have just like stood up for yourself or let yourself be uncomfortable and said like, you know what, I'm not okay with this. And that's where the idea of fuck politeness is very important,
Mm-hmm.
Like if you do not feel comfortable in any way, shape, and form, make sure someone understands like, I don't feel comfortable. Like I went on a date with a girl one time and she knew who I was. She knew where I lived. She knew my social media. We had talked a bunch before we finally decided to go out. And she was like, can you come pick me up and take me to get ice cream? I was like, sure. Where do you want to go? And she said, I don't know. And I said, okay, cool. And I was brand new to Vegas. It's like, I'm not sure where to take you because I don't know. So I'm just going to Google on my phone ice cream. And it was like 10 or 11 at night because I just gotten off of work. And we drove like half a mile away from her house to a Dairy Queen. And halfway there, she told me, I don't feel safe. And I was like, oh, okay. And I just turned around and took her back to her house. And I was just like, I'm not sure where you want to go or where we should have gone. And I had no idea what I should have done. But when she told me, like, I don't feel safe, I was like, I don't want to make you feel unsafe. And she was, like, on the phone, like, texting her friends, like, where she was going. But, like, I took her back to her house. I was like, I think I'm just going to go. She's like, oh, no, you can come in. And it's like, if you didn't feel safe with me driving half a mile to a Dairy Queen.
But you're going to invite me into your house.
Why would you ever invite me into your house? And I think it's because she thought I was upset. It's like, no. I'm still a stranger. Just because we talk to each other on the phone doesn't mean that you need to do anything to make me feel more comfortable. Like, you were bold enough to tell me you didn't feel safe because I was driving in a direction she didn't know because she was new to that part of town. And I didn't even know that,
Yeah.
And so it was just something where I heard that and I thought, oh, cool. Like, I'm glad you said something. Let's go back to your house and take you back to somewhere where you do feel safe. And so I was just like, it's cool that you want ice cream. I'm new to town. You're new to this side of town. We both don't know where the fuck anything is. And if you're not comfortable being around me alone, that is cool. I totally understand. Like, let's just hang out later when you do feel comfortable or at a better time or setting or whatever the case may be.
And then you never heard from them again.
I heard from them a little bit. Like, she messaged me here or there. And then once I met you, she accidentally liked a picture of the two of us together. And then I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, she's very nice. She saw
But it was an accident.
And then, yeah, I went and checked it and, like, the like had been taken away. I was like, oh, I see how it is. I don't feel safe now. Okay. That's kind of fucking creepy because she was creeping on us. But yeah, like, I think it's a very good point to be made. Like, fuck politeness. Like, it's very hard to figure out like how you're, engaging in like just sort of general human interaction with other human beings nowadays. And if it doesn't make you feel comfortable, it's not something you need to force yourself into. You know? So definitely something worth thinking about, especially when you hear a scenario like this.
It just turned into a whole different tangent, right? It's crazy.
But
yeah, those are the Texas killing fields. Adam talked about the Horton Haunted Hotel where they hear a who.
Wow.
I tried.
You were really working
I really
to get
tried.
that joke, I could tell.
And if you've gotten this far in the episode, we really appreciate that you've stuck through this whole topic and feel the same way we feel and get upset about the same things we get upset about because it's really freaking upsetting.
Yeah, it is, without a doubt. So, good stuff, Robin. Way to cover the topic and do it justice.
There's way more to cover, and I wish I had more time to cover all of it because, I mean, it's not just those people, right? There's so much that goes on, and there's no way to cover every single person that has been, hurt
or gone missing.
It's just so much, and my heart hurts for everybody.
Yeah, when you cover true crime topics, sometimes it can be kind of difficult because I've covered a few people who've gone missing and mentioned like, here's where you can reach out.
But there's
if you
so
have
many
any
out
information.
there.
And that's the other thing too. If you go into the missing persons database, it's endless. It's heartbreaking so much. That's why you need to pay attention to people who've gone missing in your local area, because it's like each small community is trying to do the best they can to find people. And then you also need to pay attention to the ones that are from outside of your local area, because you might be in a location where someone basically like took someone to, you know, and it's overwhelming when you think about it too much. But it's like, everyone just do the best you can, So anyways, thank you so much for listening to us. Like Robin stated, if you made it this far, we really appreciate you. If you would like to share a story with us, it doesn't have to be related to the two topics we covered today. It could be paranormal, coincidental, extraterrestrial, or true crime. Whatever you prefer, you can reach out to us by emailing storytime@scaryish.com or going to our website, scaryish.com, and clicking on contact us. Fill out that form. It does come directly to us. Or you can hit us up on any of our social medias. Twitter is @ScarishPod. Instagram is @ScarishPodcast. And Facebook is facebook.com/ScarishPodcast. We would love to hear from you. Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/ScarishPodcast, and those are monthly donations. Tiers start at $1, and at $1 you get ad-free, which is absolutely awesome.
Ad-free is the way to be.
If you're not into the monthly donation type thing, you can also go to ko-fi.com/ScarishPodcast. Those are one-time donations, and all your donations go to helping us keep this rig rolling.
Indeed.
You keep us creeping on.
You do. And we appreciate all the support that we get from you folks. It is amazing having just launched a new podcast and sort of like getting back into the idea of building a community and building social media presence and things like that. Reminds me of just how lucky we are here at Scaryish. So thank you to everyone who supports us in the ways that you do. You guys are amazing. So that is everything we have for episode 207. Next week, we will be doing the 4th year anniversary episode. So excited for it. But as far as this one goes, we are done. So, Robin, why don't you go ahead and sign us out?
Keep on creeping on and hold on to each other, please. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.